Hello and welcome back to Andy's FPL Apprentice. We've got our team selection video for Game Week 8 for you today. If you enjoyed the video, then please give it a like, leave a comment letting us know what you think of our picks for this week. And subscribe to the channel. Really appreciate it whenever anyone does that. So I'm joined as always by Will. How you doing, buddy?
Hello, good, thanks.
So it'll be a shorter video today because we don't need to go through last week's points. I did actually consider doing a hilarious talk through how our teams did, but I forgot to change my captain onto, I don't know, Williams or someone. So half the hilarity's already been lost. So it's
Already ruined the joke.
Yeah. So we can get straight onto how our teams are looking for next week.
Mm-hmm. Well, after last week, I did make 2 updates before those games all got cancelled.
Mm-hmm.
So my team has already changed a little bit. I brought in Trippier for Robertson and Mitrovic for the young striker whose name I don't want to have a crack at.
The young Brentford lad.
Yes, who went on loan. Godspeed to him.
I think they're both, like we talked about it in the for the game week that never happened, but I think they're both good calls. Mitrovic in particular, I think, is almost looking like essential at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like for his price, the fixtures, the form that he's in, he just ticks all the boxes.
Absolutely. So yeah, after that chat last week, it's kind of a combination of a few different sort of bits of advice, but getting rid of Robertson, Trippier's that much cheaper. Like the money made sense. I've improved, I think, the team as a whole.
Agreed.
But obviously, the coming game week has few games.
Yeah, so I mean, I've already released a wildcard video, so spoiler alert, I'm wildcarding.
Well, I think I have to do the same.
Yeah, so I mean, my team hasn't changed from the wildcard video that I put out yesterday, which obviously you can watch if you want a little bit more detail. I mentioned that I had a couple of players that I was not 100% set on. I think probably out of the 14, 15 players, there's probably only 2 that I could potentially change, and I think I've settled on the fact that I won't change either of them.
Mm-hmm.
Sufal was the first one. I was pretty interested in, like, if I was wildcarding next week, I would consider Anderson, who's obviously in your team at the moment. I think Crystal Palace have just looked good, and like they've got much better fixtures coming up. I think they've played better than the points that they've got so far this year.
I think I've too often left Anderson on the bench as well, and he's got decent points down there. But
yeah, because the fixtures have been tough, and like less likely to do that now. The fixtures are improving, so and Dallo was the other one that I was looking at, but neither of them have games this week. I've already got Reece James in my team, who's a lock for me, and isn't playing this week, so I don't really want another defender. I would have to play Nico Williams, and I don't think their fixtures are. I don't think they're so much better options than Sufal that it's worth it to me. The only other one that I was considering was Eric Dyer. I think getting away into the Tottenham defence would be nice, but it's kind of linked basically. Is that in midfield I've got St. Maximum, who's currently yellow flagged.
Yeah.
I want to get him in for a couple of weeks. Like, basically, Crystal Palace don't play this week, and then they've got Chelsea the week after. And after that, they've got really nice fixtures, and I really want to get on Zaha. So I wanted a placeholder, really, for Zaha. If I brought in Eric Dyer, I could easily just downgrade him and then bring in Zaha for St. Maximum, but that's booking in 2 transfers, and that seems like a lot. So I think the likelihood is I'll just stick with Sufal, and the chances are he's not going to play every week for me. He's a sort of rotation option. James will play in front of him most of the time. Like he can rotate with Trippier a little bit, or I could, there's options basically. So
that's a set of decent options there.
And St Maximum, I really don't have a good option for who I would want to replace him with, just because of the money basically that he costs. And Newcastle, I'd like to have a Newcastle attacking option. Like, I think Isaacs is really good up front, but just the forward positions are so competitive that I can't justify dropping any of my forwards for him. So
Yeah.
but I did a little bit digging, and I saw that on the previous game, Eddie Howard said that Sir Maximan was like not quite ready for it, but it wasn't far off. And of course, that's been nearly 2 weeks ago now. So I'd sort of be surprised if he wasn't fit. So I'll wait for the press conference, but I think my team is pretty much settled on that now.
Well, I mean, in terms of personnel, I'm pretty happy with my team, but I have 7 players who aren't playing next week. So the wild card, I think, is an absolute necessity. I took the tactic of looking at the fixtures that were going to be played, essentially picking the teams I think are going to win, and then quite concentrating into those teams, which I think is a risk in and of itself, but one that might really pay off in a week that there could be potentially quite low points. So with the wild card, I would be looking to swap James and Anderson for Perisic and Gabriel. I haven't really had a Tottenham defender this season, and I think they've all got pretty much similar points. I know you mentioned Perisic is a rotation risk, but I'm only intending to really have it in for 1 week. So I've gambled on that.
Yep.
Pretty much my entire midfield, save Martinelli, are not playing. So I've changed Zaha, Salah, Gross.
Yeah, and Norsgaard.
Norsgaard, who's injured. For Bernardo, Andreas at Fulham, Son and Kulusevski.
Yeah.
I basically bought Son because I had the money, because I'd got rid of Salah and felt like I just should have the one of the very big players. I've got a feeling De Bruyne might be rested for the City game at the weekend after playing pretty much all of the Champions League game. So I went for Bernardo instead, who came on as a sub, so I think might start. As you say, Fulham are in pretty good form, and I think Andreas has quite a high percentage of picks, and at 4.6 million as well, sort of made a bit of sense. And Kulusevski, because I think Tottenham will win their game this week.
Yeah, I don't mind the midfield at all. I think the Tottenham picks, I haven't gone for a Tottenham midfielder. One of the things that I decided pretty early on after I was doing a few drafts is that I felt like part of the problem is that they now have 3 players to go into 2 for those attacking midfield options. Now, Son started every game for them, so really it's Kulusevski and Richarlison fighting out for one place. I think Richarlison started the season on the bench, but has looked probably the best out of the 3 so far this year. Son's not really in any sort of form, but
no.
I'm not saying don't go for him. I picked 2 midfielders that aren't in any sort of form. Like his son, like he's not going to go through all season. Like he will find. He finished top scorer last year. Like he will find form again. But Kulusevski, I think I think they're both great picks if you knew they were going to start. But I think there is the possibility that, or the likelihood that Richarlison starts in front of one of them. I'll say like Son started every game, but I'm sort of feeling. I feel out of the 3, Son's been playing the worst, so he could potentially be the one that makes way.
Be the dropper.
Yeah, so that's my only concern with that midfield. But I agree with you. Like if you're going off the fixtures, then targeting the Leicester defence is an obvious way to go.
I think that feels good. Yeah. I was also considering playing my bench boost as well.
You can't do both in the same week.
Oh, poo.
That's going to ruin that one for you.
Well, yeah, that ruins that plan. But that was a plan I was sort of umming and ahhing. So
I will say that
I've
as a general system, I think that playing your bench boost almost immediately after a wild card is a good idea. Like if you look at your team from the last week that actually happened, like you had Norgard on the bench who was injured, and you had the young striker who neither of us want to try and pronounce his name, who had been loaned out. So you had two players that were in your squad who weren't ever going to play any minutes.
Yeah.
And that's what tends to happen. Like you play through, 8 game weeks or whatever, and somebody in your team is going to be, drop out of favour or pick up an injury. Or as soon as you wild card, you're putting in players who are playing, including all your cheap bench options. They're like you try and pick literally just players who play that are the cheapest in their position. No, you're not going to pick them very often, so it's the best time to use a bench boost.
Okay, that makes sense.
So yeah, I don't think that's a bad option, but you can't use it this week, unfortunately.
Cool.
So a couple of things on your wildcard team then. First of all, you're sticking with Sanchez then, and just planning on playing Ward?
Yeah, that was my intention. I think just for the 1 week. Although, I mean, like I'm sort of banking on obviously Tottenham banging a few past Leicester, so
yeah,
that's a potential for minus points. With this particular setup, I am 0.7 million in the green, so there's potential to get a more expensive keeper if one is worth it. Edison, perhaps.
Yeah.
Oh, I've already got 3 C players. That can't be done.
It can't. Oh yeah, good point. So I think your wildcard draft, I think, makes me more convinced that this is a genuine option for you. And if you do this, I think you'll have a bad week. I should say that, but it might help you going forward.
Okay.
So you've made 1, 2, 3. You've made 6 changes to your team, which isn't a massive amount for a wild card. And also, you've taken out a couple of players you've taken out 1 player who's in my team and 2 players that I'm looking at getting in after the next couple of fixtures. So Reece James, I've got. I know you're less keen on Reece James, and that's obviously fine. You can still potentially get rid of him, but just saying, I don't think he's a bad pick. And Zaha and Anderson, I'm actively looking at bringing in, and Zaha, probably definitely bringing in. So I don't necessarily think that I don't know 100% sure that you're strengthening your team going forward. I think that you're strengthening it for this game week.
But just for a week, yeah.
Like you're 3 players short, basically, of having a full 11. I think taking a -8 and making 3 changes is just setting you back way too much for 1 single game week. I think making 2 changes for a -4 and getting 10 players out really isn't the end of the world. Like particularly when a lot of people who aren't wildcarding are going to be playing players like Williams and Pereira, who they're not bad options at all, but like you're not going to be surprised if they get a 2-pointer. So, taking a -4, not having a player who's likely to only score a point or 2, doesn't put you miles behind everyone this week. The problem I'd say is that quite a few of your players who aren't playing are some of your highest value players.
Yeah.
So I think if I was making 2 changes, the first one that I would make is Norgard. I don't think he's been a good enough pick in your team to warrant holding on to whilst he's injured, and there's no guarantee that he's going to be back after the international break anyway. It says 1st of October that he's flagged for, and it doesn't necessarily mean he's going to jump straight back into the team anyway.
He's going to be there.
So I would look at getting rid of Norgard, and because Salah's... No, I don't think Salah's a bad pick at all going forward, but he hasn't been in great form. He's still not been in bad form. I think he's the second highest point scorer in midfield, so he's not terrible, but they've got a blank this week. I think they've got Brighton's one of the fixtures, and they've got 2 other. I could just look this up. I don't know why I'm guessing it. Yeah, they've got Brighton next, and then they've got Arsenal and Man City. Personally, I'm looking at bringing Salah back in probably after that run of fixtures, I still think he'd be a good option this year. But I don't think there's anything wrong with taking him out now.
Yeah.
Now, if it was me, the players that I'd be looking at is, like you've said, that I'd actually put KDB. But you could easily bring Son in instead if you do think that he's going to get a rest. But yeah, changing your Salah plays for another premium midfielder, essentially.
Yeah.
And then Norgard, you could bring in somebody. I've put Gordon, who I think is a good cheap option. You're basically looking at a cheap playing option in midfield. Everton don't score a lot of goals, but when they do, it seems to be going through Gordon. He's only 5.5 million. He seems to play 90 minutes every week. Like, he's a go-to player for him. I think he's a decent pick. And I think if you looked at your week, like 9, your game week 9 squad, I think it could potentially look better like that than it would if you played the free hit. Like, the difference between our teams this year is that you're happy with yours and I'm not happy with mine, which is why I want a wild card. And finally on that, saving the wild card, you do have to use it in the first half of the year, otherwise you lose it. I think around game week 12, where the Man City Arsenal fixture has been cancelled.
Yeah. Heavily into City and Arsenal.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of options there. Like, either you could wildcard in game week 12 and look at getting rid of some of those players, or, which the second one is what I would probably do, is that I'd try and dead end into that game week, basically. Like, I would just set up your team until that game week. Just players who have good fixtures in that time. Start, like, every week you're starting taking out your Arsenal and your City assets, so you've got less and less of them until the point that maybe you've still got Haaland and you're benching for that week because you'll lose a lot of value in him.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, dead end your team and then just bring them all back in and wildcard in game week 13 after that fixture.
That sounds like a solid plan.
So yeah, I'm not saying that the wildcard is a bad option for you this week, but I don't think you necessarily have to do it. I think you can just accept the fact that maybe you're not going to be happy with your team this week, but you can still get out a decent team with just taking a -4. And when a lot of people have used the wildcard, you can make up those points when you get to use it. Like I say, I'd go for game week 13 personally.
All right.
Finally, captaincy thoughts for this week? What are you looking at?
I've remained on Haaland. He played excellently again in the Champions League, so he just seems to be continuing his form. And I've left my vice captain on Tony, who again is in sort of blistering form currently. So if Haaland does get a rest, that we've been assuming for a while will come, but then I'd be glad for Tony to take over.
Yeah, I'm on Haaland as well. He's playing too well to not have him as captain. Like, he's got points. He's returned every week, so it is tough when I've now brought in Kane and he's playing Leicester, who have been the worst defence in the league. But Kane's just going to have to get my vice captaincy because I can't move it off Haaland. Also, like, we've been talking about Haaland's rest for a bit. He's just had a week's rest. Like, they didn't have a game last week. Of course he has. So it sort of makes me think, like, why bother? Like, he's had his rest. It's come when everyone else had their rest. Keep playing him.
Yeah, I'm into that.
Well, that's it for our Game Week 8 team selection video. Let us know in the comments what you think of our changes. Let me know what you think Will should do. Should he listen to my advice or completely ignore it? Give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Please consider subscribing to the channel. It doesn't cost you anything and it is massively appreciated by us. And that's it. We'll leave it there. We'll see you again for another video.